I used to go to the corner cafe just because it was the only place open late on weekdays, but over time, the routine became something else. I'd walk in, order the same coffee, sit at the same table, scroll on my phone without really reading anything. It was my way of filling the quiet hours I didn't want to spend in my apartment. That Tuesday night was the same, except she was there. She sat near the window, a paperback in her hands, glasses pushed halfway down her nose. My friend's mom. I almost didn't recognize her without the usual setting of her porch or the kitchen at his place. There was something about the way she tilted the book toward the light, absent-mindedly stirring a tea she wasn't drinking, that made me look twice. I told myself to just keep walking, order, sit down, like always. But she caught me. "Don't you usually come in earlier?" she asked, glancing up. Her voice had that casual, teasing edge, like she wasn't really curious but wanted to see what I'd say. I cleared my throat. Yeah. Guess I lost track of time. I don't know why I sat across from her. Maybe it was the empty chair, or maybe I wanted to look less like the guy who eats alone. She closed her book slowly, marking the page with a receipt. "They still remember your order, you know," she said, nodding toward the counter. And she was right, the barista called it out before I even got up. That tiny detail made me feel seen in a way I wasn't used to. We didn't talk much after that. Just little things. She asked about my classes, I asked about her work. Every answer carried long pauses, the kind where you don't know if the silence is awkward or comfortable. I found myself watching the way her hand rested near her cup, tapping the rim now and then. I looked away before she noticed. I realized how empty my own hands were. I folded the napkin in front of me, tore a corner off, smoothed it flat again. That was when I caught her smile, small, knowing. "You're too restless," she said, softly. "Too innocent. Maybe that's the word." I laughed, but it came out more like a breath. That's one way to put it. She didn't explain what she meant, and I didn't ask. That's how it always was with her, she could drop a line that landed heavier than it should, then go right back to sipping tea. After a while, she stood to leave. She slipped the book into her bag, wrapped her scarf, and hesitated just enough at the door to make me think she might say something else. Instead, she gave a small wave and walked out into the night. I watched her reflection fade in the glass before I even touched my coffee. Back at my apartment, I stared at the blank message box on my phone. I typed something, "Nice running into you tonight," but didn't send it. I locked the screen, unlocked it again. Then the notification buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. "You're quieter than I remember. Next time, don't make me do all the talking." I read it twice, then a third time, feeling something shift in my chest. For the first time in weeks, the silence in my apartment didn't feel quite so heavy. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. She was standing outside her building, struggling with 2 grocery bags that looked about ready to split. I'd been walking back from class, headphones in, head down, when I caught the sound of something thudding against the pavement. An apple rolled into the street. "Need a hand?" I asked, pulling the earbuds free. She glanced up, and for a moment her expression flickered, surprise, then something else. "I won't say no." I carried the heavier bag up the steps. It felt like nothing, but I could tell she didn't like admitting it. Inside her apartment, the air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and brewed tea. She moved quickly, stacking items into cupboards, while I hovered, unsure whether to stay or slip out quietly. "You can set it on the counter," she said without turning, her tone casual, but her shoulders stiff. I obeyed, then leaned back against the counter, watching her tuck things away. The silence stretched. She broke it. "You remind me of your dad when he was your age. Always hanging around the house, pretending he had somewhere better to be." I blinked. "You knew my dad?" "Of course. Your parents used to come over for barbecues." She smiled faintly, not at me but at some memory I wasn't part of. Back then you were just, running around with skinned knees. The thought of her knowing that version of me made something twist in my chest. I wasn't sure I wanted her remembering me like that. She must have noticed my face because she added softly, "Don't worry. You've grown into yourself. I just forget how quickly time moves." Her words hung there, heavy. I wanted to ask what she meant, but instead, I reached for the nearest object, a jar of honey she'd left on the counter, and turned it in my hand as though it mattered. "This yours?" I said. Stupid, meaningless. Her eyes flicked to me, amused. "Unless you plan to steal it." We both laughed, but it wasn't really about the joke. When the bags were empty, she filled the kettle again, offering me tea like it was the most natural thing. We sat across from each other at the small table, steam curling between us. I caught myself staring at her hands, slender, deliberate, resting on the ceramic mug. My pulse did something strange. That's when the doubts crept in. She was twice my age. My friend's mom. What did I think I was doing, sitting here like this? I imagined how it would look from the outside, the judgment it would draw. My throat tightened, but I didn't move. She seemed to sense the shift. "You're too quiet again," she said softly. Then, after a pause, "It's dangerous, you know." I wasn't sure if she meant me, or us, or the moment itself. I looked up. Her gaze held mine longer than it should have. And then she reached across, almost absent-mindedly, and brushed a crumb from the edge of my sleeve. The gesture lasted half a second, but it felt like the room tilted. I told myself it meant nothing. I knew it meant more. It became easier to find excuses. Walking the long way back from class, slowing near her building. She seemed to sense it too, never surprised when I knocked, always with that half-smile, as if she'd been expecting me. One evening, rain hammered the windows so loud the TV remote on her coffee table rattled. I sat on the couch, damp from the sprint over, and she handed me a towel. "You'll catch something if you keep running in storms," she said, shaking her head. I rubbed my hair, watching her from the corner of my eye. She curled into the armchair across from me, legs tucked under a blanket, tea cooling on the side table. The room smelled faintly of cinnamon. I wanted to say something, anything, but words felt dangerous. Safer to sit in the sound of the storm. Then, a knock at the door. She froze. I did too. Her son's voice. "My friend." "Mom. You home?" My stomach lurched. She shot me a quick look, sharp, almost panicked, then whispered, "Stay quiet." I barely breathed. Keys rattled in the lock, then stilled. A beat later, footsteps retreated down the hall. She exhaled hard, pressing a hand to her forehead. "He forgets things here all the time," she murmured. "Can't seem to stay away." I didn't answer. Couldn't. My pulse still hammered. When she looked at me again, something in her expression had shifted, tighter, guarded. "This isn't wise." I nodded, though part of me didn't mean it. My hands twisted the towel in my lap, wringing water that wasn't there anymore. The rain slowed, easing into a patter. She stood, restless, and began gathering the mugs, the remote, the stray newspaper. It felt like she was trying to undo the room, put things back where they belonged. "You should go," she said. Not harsh. Just, careful. I rose, reluctant. At the door, I fumbled with my jacket, the sleeve catching. She stepped close to help, her fingers brushing my wrist. Too close. Too steady. The air between us stilled. I turned, just slightly, enough to see her face inches from mine. Her breath caught, I swear I heard it. For a second, the whole world shrank to the space between us, to her hand still holding the cuff of my sleeve. Then she let go. Stepped back. You should go, she repeated, softer this time. Almost apologetic. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Only silence. I left with the storm still clinging to me. That night, lying in bed, I replayed that half-second over and over, the almost, the pause, the way she'd looked at me like she wanted to speak but swallowed it instead. And the worst part was knowing I'd wanted her to finish. It was late afternoon when she asked if I wanted to walk. Nothing planned, just a stretch along the park trail near her building. The air carried that early spring chill, the kind that slips under your jacket and lingers. We walked side by side, not close enough to touch, but near enough that I felt the space between us like a weight. Birds cut low arcs over the pond, kids shouted from the playground, and for a while it felt almost ordinary. Until she asked, "Do you talk about this with anyone?" Her voice was even, but her eyes didn't meet mine. I shook my head. No. I wouldn't. She gave the faintest smile. Good. You shouldn't. We stopped at a bench overlooking the water. She sat, tugging her scarf tighter, and I sat beside her. A long pause, broken only by the wind nudging the branches above us. You know, she said finally, sometimes I think you only come around because you don't know where else to go. I turned toward her, stung but unsure why. That's not true. Isn't it? She glanced at me then, her gaze sharp, as though she wanted me to admit it. You're young. You should be out with people your age. Falling in and out of love. Making mistakes that don't follow you. I swallowed hard. Maybe I already made those. Her eyebrows lifted. A small silence followed. Something inside me gave way then. Maybe it was the way she said, "Follow you," like she was already carrying more than she wanted to admit. Maybe it was the look she gave me, tired, curious, afraid. I don't come around because I'm bored, I said quietly. I come because when I'm there, I don't feel like a kid. You don't make me feel small. Her hands twisted in her lap, fingers pulling at the edge of her gloves. She didn't look at me. That's dangerous, she murmured. I know. Finally, she turned. Her face was bare in that moment, no teasing, no smile. Just something stripped down, raw. I catch myself waiting for you, she admitted, barely above a whisper. That scares me more than I can explain. The words pressed into me, heavy and electric at once. I leaned forward before I realized it, my knee brushing hers. She didn't move away. Her breath came slow, controlled, but I saw her throat shift as she swallowed. For a second, just one, we were tilted toward something irreversible. My hand twitched at my side, wanting to reach for hers. Then she stood abruptly, pulling the scarf looser, breaking the moment clean in half. We should head back, she said, steady again, though her voice betrayed the tremor underneath. I followed, but each step felt unsteady, like I was walking out of a dream I hadn't decided to leave. After that walk, things shifted. I didn't see her at the cafe. Didn't catch her in the hallway. Even when I slowed past her building, the blinds were drawn, the windows dark. At first I thought it was chance. Wrong timing. But days stretched, then a week, and the silence grew heavier. When she finally texted, it was short, busy week. Take care. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply. I typed, erased, typed again. Settled on, sure. Hope you're okay. Hit send before I could think better of it. No response. It wasn't until another 3 days that I ran into her by accident, if it was an accident. She was outside, unloading a box from the trunk of her car. A framed photo stuck out from the packing paper, a man's arm draped around her shoulders. I froze. She noticed, of course. Slid the photo deeper into the box before I could get a better look. Just clearing out the last of it, she said, her voice clipped. Whose? I started, but stopped. She shook her head. Doesn't matter. I wanted to argue, but her expression warned me off. She carried the box inside, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. The next day, she was different. Lighter, almost. She greeted me with a smile that felt rehearsed, like she'd remembered how to play a part. "Don't look so worried," she said, setting 2 mugs of tea on the table. "I'm not falling apart." I sat across from her, uncertain. "I wasn't, you were." She cut me off gently, then stirred her tea, eyes fixed on the spoon. "It's complicated. Divorce papers finally went through. That's all." She said it like it was nothing. But her hand shook just enough to ripple the surface of her tea. I didn't know what to say. Relief, sympathy, guilt, all tangled at once. My mind flashed to our walk, the almost confession, and now this. "I'm sorry, I managed." She smiled again, small and tired. "Don't be." It was over long before the paperwork. The room felt different then. Closer, heavier. I wanted to reach across, to ask her what she really wanted. Instead, I wrapped my fingers around the mug, too hot to hold, and said nothing. When I left that night, she didn't walk me to the door. Just stayed seated, staring into her tea as if it held the rest of the story. Outside, the air was sharp with cold. I pulled my jacket tighter, phone heavy in my pocket. I typed a message, "Do you want me to come back?" My thumb hovered over send. Then I locked the screen. And walked home with the question still burning in my hand. It was late. Too late to knock, but I did anyway. She opened the door in a cardigan, hair loose, eyes tired. For a second, she just looked at me, as though weighing whether to let me in at all. Then she stepped aside. The apartment was dim, a single lamp on in the corner. The smell of tea lingered. I stood there awkwardly, jacket still zipped, trying to find words that didn't sound foolish. "You shouldn't be here," she said, quiet. Not angry. Just, resigned. "I know," I admitted. But I couldn't, I stopped. Tried again. I didn't want to keep guessing. Her lips pressed together. She moved to the kitchen, busying herself with the kettle though it was already hot. I followed, leaning against the counter, the same spot I had the first time. "You think you want this," she said, not looking at me. "But you don't. You want the idea of me. Something you'll outgrow." I shook my head. "That's not true." She turned then, finally meeting my eyes. "You're 20. I'm not. And I'm your friend's mother. Do you realize how reckless, how selfish, this is?" The words hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I couldn't answer. My chest tightened, not from shame exactly, but from the weight of everything unspoken. "I don't care what it looks like," I said, softer than I meant to. "I just know I feel different when I'm here. Like I matter. Like I'm not invisible." Her face flickered, pain, maybe, or recognition. She leaned back against the counter, one hand pressed flat to the wood as though steadying herself. "Do you know what you're asking me to risk?" she whispered. The silence stretched. I could hear the kettle click off, the hum of the refrigerator. "I'm not asking," I said finally. "I'm just telling you the truth." She closed her eyes, a slow inhale through her nose. When she opened them, there was something softer there, fragile. She reached out, not fully, just enough that her fingers brushed my wrist. A touch so light I almost thought I imagined it. We stood like that, not moving, the distance between us both unbearable and necessary. "Even if this goes nowhere," I said, voice catching, "I don't want to keep pretending." Her hand lingered, then slipped away. She gave a small, tired smile that held more weight than words. "Okay," she breathed. Not agreement. Not refusal. Just, okay. It was enough to undo me. We didn't kiss. We didn't cross the line. But in that moment, the quiet was fuller than any confession. Spring folded into summer before I realized how much time had passed. Finals ended, routines shifted, and I found myself walking a little less aimlessly. The cafe still called to me, same corner table, same black coffee ordered before I spoke. Only now, I didn't always sit alone. Sometimes she joined, sometimes she didn't. It didn't matter. The silence between us had changed shape. It wasn't heavy anymore. It rested easy, like a coat shrugged off once you step indoors. One morning, 8:47 a.m. exactly, I saw her waiting by the window bench in the park. Same scarf, lighter jacket. She looked up as I approached and patted the spot beside her without a word. I sat. The pond shimmered under the early light, kids already chasing each other across the grass. She poured tea from a thermos, handed me a cup, then smiled at my expression. "You'll survive without your coffee for once," she teased. I took it, both hands wrapped around the warmth. The taste was different, floral, faintly sweet, but steadying. We didn't talk about what we were, or weren't. We didn't need to. What had once felt like a line we kept circling had slowly, quietly, turned into a path. Not smooth, not simple, but ours. I noticed how her hand sometimes lingered on mine a beat too long when passing the cup back. How she didn't flinch at being seen with me in public anymore. How she laughed easier, like she'd set something down she'd been carrying too long. I still had doubts, sometimes lying awake at night, wondering how this could possibly last. But then I'd remember moments like now, the thermos between us, her shoulder brushing mine on the bench, the way she turned to ask if I wanted more tea before I even thought to ask. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. Her divorce was still fresh. My future still unsteady. There were questions neither of us could answer yet. But the weight of pretending had lifted, and that was enough. When she stood to leave, she glanced back at me, eyes warm but steady. "You're quieter than I remember," she said again, echoing her very first message. "Maybe I finally learned to listen," I replied. She smiled, soft, knowing. That was our language now, small callbacks, quiet threads pulling the past into the present. As she walked ahead, I trailed just behind, watching the sway of her scarf, the sunlight on her hair. I thought about how ordinary it all looked from the outside. Just two people, walking back from the park. But inside, it was something else entirely. Something that didn't need naming. Something only we would understand.